podcast. Happy New Year, everyone. Super exciting to be here in 2025. I say that as we're pre-recording still in 2024.
Yes, but I hope everybody had a good holiday.
Yeah, but today I thought it would be fun for us to go over, I would say we're calling this the best rides in Disney World. So I told my mom she can pick rides that are her favorites and rides that also that maybe necessarily aren't her favorites, but think like objectively, these are probably some of the best rides in Disney World and just like kind of what you think about them. So what did you put in your number 5?
My number 5 is Small World. I'm
Yeah, for
sorry.
sure.
I looked at every ride. I even went back and said, okay, did I miss any? Did I do anything? I think Small World is a great ride because it's just nostalgia for everybody. It's the reminder of the World's Fair for people who have been there. It's got all the different countries so that, like, you know, when you're riding through with, even with kids, you'll hear the parents saying, oh, that's, you know, Ireland, or that's England, or that's China. Or I just love it. I think it's a great ride. I think everybody should go on it. The boats are a little tight for people with long legs, but I think everybody should go on it.
No, I agree. I think It's a Small World is a very classic Disney ride. I think if people think of like Magic Kingdom or Disneyland, It's a Small World is one of the first rides that you're likely going to think of, which I think is really cool because it's also quite unique as well to, you know, Disney in a general sense. For instance, I think sometimes people think of like the carousel or the teacups as well as like a classic Disney ride, but those types of rides are in other parks as well. Like you can mimic the teacup ride. There's carousels all over the world. Carousels have been around for way longer, you know, way before Disney, but It's a Small World is very unique to Disney. There's really no other ride like that in other parks. I mean, other parks can mimic similar things, of course, but It's a Small World, I think, is classic.
And I think,
Disney.
like I said, it appeals to people my age who went to the World's Fair and did it before. And it appeals to every age when you're going through. It's just so much to look at, so many details, the costumes, the everything, and everything's to detail. I think it's great.
Yeah, no, for sure. A very classic ride. So in my 5, this is where I have Rise of the Resistance. Rise of the Resistance opened on December 5th, 2019 in Hollywood Studios. The attraction features an immersive experience between a walkthrough experience, a trackless ride, and emotion simulator. So I think this ride is a really great ride overall. I think it's an overall experience. I remember the first time I went on it, that's what I kept telling people is like, it's not just a ride, it's like a full-on experience that you're going through this whole simulation type of thing. So essentially you are part of the Resistance, you're being you're transporting the secret location of the Resistance elsewhere. Your ship gets intercepted by the First Order, and so you have to board a Star Destroyer, and then you wait interrogation by Kylo Ren. Where the Resistance breaks in, you board a First Order transport vehicle, and that's the trackless motion part of the ride. Some people say that's like the real ride, so to speak, whereas the other parts are, in a way, it's just a glorified queue to a certain extent, which I do agree with that it is a glorified queue, but I do think it is a full experience. I mean, like you do get in the motion simulator that simulates you driving when you're, or flying when you're with Beck. And I mean, like walking through the Star Destroyer, it's much different than just being on a regular queue, I would say, in my opinion, at least. So of course, then you're in the transport vehicle and you're trying to get to the escape pod. So you kind of go through, you have to avoid the droids, the stormtroopers, Kylo Ren himself, and you finally make it to Black Sparrow's outpost. Now, when this ride first opened, it did used to break down a lot. It broke down all the time. And at this point, if you went on the ride when it first opened in 2019 or right after in 2020, you will notice now when you go on that some things are no longer there or they have been changed. And I think that's because there are elements that kept breaking down that either the ride was going to be perpetually broken down or they just had to remove and change things about the ride, which I think is completely fine. That it's like, all right, just change things or remove things that are not working. And so there are some things even when I go on that I notice like, oh, that's missing, or like that used to be here and that's no longer here. It's like, well, it probably broke, and they're like, let's just keep the ride going because one element of this full like 20-minute experience is like, you know, it's like we're gonna make the line long or something like that. So, and recently they have been experimenting with these single rider lines as well. I also think even the Rise of Resistance is in 5. I do think this is one of the rides that Disney really took. I would say, like in comparison to other parks around the world, Disney hasn't done a lot of innovative type rides like this. This was the first like major innovation that they have done in this park. So for instance, I know Universal and some of the other big theme parks in Asia, you know, they go all out on some of their animatronics, on the technology that they're using in the ride, the immersive experience. And this was Disney's first like major immersive experience like that with Rise of the Resistance, which I think they did a great job on. I think the overall plot and storyline of the ride is great. I think overall it's a great ride, except for the fact it just breaks down a lot. So that is a shame. Let me tell you, It's a Small World. It can't break down, can it? Because you're just on a little boat.
No, you get stuck in the boat a little bit longer. But that's about it. You can't really break down. Like I said, it's a small world. It's just what it is. You know, like I said, it doesn't have all those aspects to it. But each ride appeals to a different audience.
No, for sure. All right, what's in your 4?
My 4th one was Pirates of the Caribbean.
Okay.
I think that ride is just a cool ride for everybody. Whether you're young boys, you're young girls, you're adults, you're going through that ride and it's bringing you back to where that was. I think that how they do it in the dark, like it's dark, the skeletons, the crabs moving, the ocean. By the time you get through, you're running through the villages where they're, everything's on fire and all the guys are there. And then, they're doing the auction and they actually have hair on the legs of the people that, you look like, you think you're looking at the real people and what happened at that time. I think that when you go through that, that also, I guess my rides is appealing to everybody because it appeals to just the idea of what the scene would be.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I have Pirates of the Caribbean later on my list, but in my number 4, I have Flight of Passage, the Avatar Flight of Passage.
Okay.
This ride opened on May 27th, 2017. It's basically a 3D flight simulator. So the Na'vi, I say in quotes from Avatar, they create this technology that will simulate you riding on the back of an Ikran or a Banshee. So you're then connected to a Na'vi body through like technology, fictional technology, of course. And you wear these 3D glasses, you board your Ikran, and then the ride takes you through Pandora. You basically just fly around the planet. That's kind of it at the end of it. The ride is about 4 to 5 minutes long, and cast members now do warn you about motion sickness during the ride, since a lot of people did get sick right when the ride opened.
Dizzy, right.
Yeah, in 2017, 2018, a lot of people got very sick from the ride, especially like vertigo type sickness, not just being like motion sickness, but like the vertigo aspect of it, because the ride is also 3D, and sometimes those 3D glasses
it sends you off.
Yeah, like even watching a 3D movie, sometimes like it's like 3D is like not natural for your eyes. It's like you go your whole life not looking at things in 3D, and then you spend 4 minutes on a simulator for 3D.
While you're moving.
They also say too, if you want to go on the ride like back to back, a lot of people will get sick if you do the ride back to back as well. They suggest waiting like 20 to 30 minutes to do the ride again, because it just throws your equilibrium off.
Put your equilibrium back in place.
For sure. Because again, it's not like you're just sitting in a seat. You're riding on an Ikran, you're riding on a Banshee.
Right.
So, but I think this ride is great. I think when the ride first opened, it was so mythical because no one knew what this ride was going to be. Everyone was wondering what it was going to be. Everyone was wondering if it's going to be a roller coaster or something else. And so no one really knew exactly. It's essentially the same mechanism as Soarin' in that sense, where it's like, everyone kind of like sits together sort of, and then you watch the same screen. I tried to look up to see how big that screen is. I couldn't find anything online that said exactly how big the screen was. It did say it is 4K resolution and 60 like frames per second, which means it's like, the quality of it is very high, of course. But yeah, but I couldn't figure out how big the screen is. And it did say you have basically a 180 view as well, as what I found. So I don't know. But they say the screen is like IMAX theater like size is what it's compared to at the very least. So, but I'd be curious to know the exact size of the screen, just out of my own curiosity. I mean, like it's curved too, so maybe that's why there's no exact size.
Yeah, it's curved, but you got 6 of those bikes and people sitting on the bikes, so you got to figure that's at least what.
Well, you have like 12 technically, because it's like 6. I
that's
think
right.
It's like 8. Maybe it's
that's
16.
Right, because you're in
it's
2
16,
different rooms,
so it's
but
8
looking
and
at the
8,
same screen, right?
And
I
then
forgot
there's
about
like
that.
2 rows of like 8 and 8, so it's just like
it's bigger than you think.
It is, yeah. So a lot of people can watch the simulation at once, and I think this ride's great. I think again the technology in this ride is really great. A lot of people really love it. I think it's very interesting. Even if you don't know Avatar, you can just go on the ride and it's still kind of fun. Like you don't need to know literally anything about the backstory of Avatar. Right. You can just go on. They give you enough of the lore for you to get kind of what's going on. Right. But then once you're on the ride itself, you realize you're flying a mythical creature, flying around, and that's all you really need to know to enjoy the ride. I think this is one of the best rides that Disney added. I think overall too, Pandora was a great addition to Animal Kingdom as well, and so I think it really opened up a lot of doors for Animal Kingdom. So yeah, I think great ride for Animal Kingdom. Flight of Passage. All right, what was in your number 3?
Okay, you just did all my work for me because number 3 was Pandora.
Flight of Passage.
And the only thing I have to add is because I agree. I agree that Pandora is for everybody. Even if you've done I have not seen the Pandora movies. I have no want to see the Pandora movies. Okay, excuse me, Avatar. I have no want to see the movies. I mean, I don't know anything about it. I don't know anything about Avatar. When I went on it, I made them go first.
Yeah, my mom was really nervous because we had heard people saying they get motion sickness on the ride.
And I get motion sickness very quickly.
Yeah, so she's very nervous. But once we went on it and realized it's very similar to Soarin', we were like, oh, my mom could definitely do this.
Yes.
She was very nervous up until the moment she sat down on that Ikran.
Yes. I got to tell you, and then once I did that, I got off that ride going, oh my God,
her
I want to go again.
Ride,
I want to go again. And I just have to say that, yes, there are times when all of a sudden I will feel the 3D, I will feel the screen.
For sure.
I will feel that my But if you really want to do anything, just close your eyes for a minute. It'll just like balance you out a little bit. But I don't even have to do it. I mean, you're watching, you're doing, you're moving. I think this ride just appeals to just.
I agree too, because I think also Flight of Passage is a thrill ride, but it's not like thrilling the way like Rise of Resistance is also a thrill ride, but you are sitting in a thing that spins you around. It's not a roller coaster. It's not, it's a
This
thrill
is a different
ride,
kind of ride.
But it's still manageable. So even for, of course, a lot of these rides have height restrictions. So even if your kid just makes the height restriction, but you think maybe they're too young for it, obviously go on it first, maybe watch a video, decide if they can handle it or not. But I think for the most part, it's a thrill ride, but it's not as scary as like a big roller coaster or something like that.
No, because you're sitting still. You're not going down a hill.
Yeah,
you're
sitting in the
all
same
you have to do is
spot.
close your eyes and you're fine. I think that's why it's so good for everybody. And like I said, even if you don't know the movies or the avatars,
you really don't need to know.
I think it's just it captures your imagination of what it does.
And like low key, even seeing the movies like a few times like I have, I don't think seeing the movies has added anything to my experience.
Okay. It's a great experience.
My experience has not been heightened because I've seen the 2 movies. So.
Yeah. No, this is one of the ones I always want to go on.
For sure. No, I do love Flight of Passage. All right. And my number 3, speaking of thrill rides, this is where I have Tower of Terror. Tower of Terror opened on July 22nd, 1994 in Disney's Hollywood Studios. It was then later added to Disney California Adventure Park, Disney Sea, and Disney Studios soon after. It is inspired by the Twilight Zone episode on the Hollywood Tower Hotel. So on Halloween night, although I think actually when you're on the ride, it's just on a night, it's not technically Halloween, but in the movie, it's Halloween night. So depending upon which one, I think even in the Twilight Zone, I don't think it's Halloween night. It's just a stormy night. But it's in 1939, a lightning strikes the hotel, causing 5 people to go mysteriously missing. You then board the maintenance service elevator instead to kind of experience to see like what happened to them. And the ride then features and the one in Hollywood Studios features a few smaller scenes before you move into the section where the ride drops you between 20 to 40 feet a few times. And it's always going to be different. It's like, I forget the word for it, but it's always going to be different for the most part. Like it kind of makes up like a new simulation every single time. So every time you go on it, it's going to be different drops. You don't know how far you're going to drop.
I can't comment. I've never been on it.
Yeah, my mom's never been on it before. I do love Tower of Terror. I think this is one of the best rides that Disney has ever created. I realize for the most part, the idea of going up very tall and dropping down has been in every single theme park. It's a very easy concept to say that you're going up high just to drop down. But I think what makes this different is the theming of it, the overall immersive storytelling of it. I think a lot of the other rides are just very basic. You just go up, you go down.
The queue's really cool to go through
For sure. So it's like this ride is it's extremely immersive in that sense, where it's like you're going through a whole story. And I think that's what Disney does well in a lot of their rides, is that you're not just going on a ride, you're going through a whole story, so it becomes an experience. And I feel like that's what makes it memorable. It's not like Six Flags where you're just going on a fun roller coaster and then you go to the next fun roller coaster. It's like a fun experience. And I think Disney does it the best. I have now been to Busch Gardens, and Busch Gardens does do little stories for each of the rides, which I do appreciate. But the story is basically all the same. Like you're basically going on this ride, like there's this big bad, will you survive? And then it's like, of course you survive. It's all the same. Every single thing like that. It's like, are you going to survive the Black Forest? You're going to survive the Dark Castle? You're going to survive, the Yeti? It's like everything was the same in the park. And it was fun. I appreciated the experience. But I think Tower of Terror is very unique in this sense, where it's a thrill ride. I would say it's a bit more of a thrill ride than Flight of Passage. Of course, this is definitely a scary ride. I would say overall, even the theming of it is very scary, whereas Flight of Passage, the theming of it is supposed to be exciting. Like it's fun to go on the Banshee, it's fun to be in the Ikron, or it's like they're trying to scare you on Tower of Terror. Like that's the whole purpose of it, is to be a little spooky. I don't think it's like super scary. It's like it is very dark, of course. So it's like if you have someone who's afraid of the dark, they probably would not like this ride, because a lot of the queue is very dark.
In the dark. Okay.
Yeah, right before you get on and like you line up for the elevator, you're in the boiler room, I say in quotes. So it's like the boiler room is very dark in the boiler room. And I'm pretty sure that's the same for all of them too, because even when I was in Disneyland Paris, it was the same, that you're in the boiler room. And then of course the one in Disney California Adventure Park did get rethemed to a Guardians of the Galaxy ride. And so that one has a whole different theming. Still fun, same ride concept of just going up and down, but very fun. I have been on that one once and it was very fun. I do remember that. And that one's not a scary theme. Like that one's supposed to be like you're breaking out. It's like, I think it's called like Mission Breakout or something like that. Right. And that one has like a fun theme to it, which I think is good. Yeah, but I think this ride is so great. I think the storytelling is so great. I think it's really fun that they pulled from the Twilight Zone, which is really cool, like pulling from, especially because you're in Hollywood Studios, and the Twilight Zone was one of the most famous TV shows. That a lot of it took place in Hollywood too, or in California. Right. And then, now you have this fictional hotel. Right. I feel like it blends really well together with the overall theming of what Hollywood Studios was intended to be originally. So one of the best rides, one of my favorites. All right, now we're in number 2. What's your number 2?
Soarin'.
Soarin'?
Yeah.
I do love Soarin'.
I think Soarin's a great ride. I think the whole concept of how they do it. I've seen the documentary of how they built the
Yeah, very
it's like an
interesting.
erector set of how they built it to get you up there, and the 3 levels, and you're just sitting there, and you feel like you're flying because your feet are dangling, and you're all open technically. But I just think it's so great that it goes over all those spaces that you've never seen before. It gets real in close to see. You almost feel like you're going to end up in the water or end up in the mountains. Or I think the way they did it was just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, no, I love
and like
Soarin'.
you said, that's another ride that I've not seen anyplace else. It's one of those unique rides that Disney came up with, and like after you watch them build that whole piece of how they did it and how they get the people on it and how they run through the show, I just think it's great.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love Soarin'. I think it was a really great concept when they created it. I know that ride initially opened in Disneyland with Soarin' over California, just to show the different parts of
And then they brought it
the
here.
variety of California overall.
And I think both of them were good too.
Yeah, I love both.
The
Soarin' over
Disney, the California one,
Yeah, and Soarin'
and the
around
new
world.
one. I
Yeah,
like
for
both
sure.
of them.
Yeah, I like the concept too of it too. Is like that you are like, again, you're flying above these areas that you wouldn't really see from these angles. Like even in California, like you may have seen the orange groves, you've seen the waves. At the
And they
shore.
knew enough to put the smells in there
forests.
too, to give you the idea that even though you're flying through the orange groves, you're smelling them. So it's like, I'm not just looking at a picture. It's actually, I can smell them, I can see
it's
them.
creating more of that immersive experience. That it's really fun. I do agree too. I don't really know many other places that do a ride similar to Soarin'. I'm sure there definitely are. That
There
there's
may
lots
be,
of copycats
yes.
elsewhere. Because again, I haven't been to every theme park in
Right.
the world, and there's lots of theme parks all over
Right.
the world. So I'm sure someone has copied it, but I do think it is a really good, like, innovative technology.
Yeah, if
that
you have a
they created
chance,
to
I don't
do
know if
Soarin'.
that one is still on, but I gotta tell you, if you get a chance to see how they put it together and how they figured out how to do it, it was very
Yeah,
interesting.
no, I definitely love Soarin'. All right, my number 2, this is where I have Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. This roller coaster opened on May 27th, 2022. Estimated it cost $500 million to make. This is making it the most expensive ride to create in all of Disney World. I think of all of the Disney parks as well.
Wow.
It's very expensive to create. This is because Disney really wanted to create a very different type of indoor roller coaster. So a lot of new technology was created just for this roller coaster alone. It was delayed before COVID, but it did still open for the 50th anniversary celebrations. It is the first ride in Disney World to feature a backwards launch roller coaster and is themed fully to the Guardians of the Galaxy. And a lot of the cast did return to the ride to do new scenes for the ride itself. The overall story of it is that the Nova Corps, which is like a planet in Guardians of the Galaxy, they welcome you to their Nova ship, and they use something called the Cosmic Generator to create jump points in space to connect our world to their world. But then this big dude named Eson, I don't know actually know how he pronounces it, he immediately steals the Cosmic Generator, and he wants to go back in time to prevent the Big Bang from even happening. And so the Guardians of the Galaxy are called. They lock your escape pod to the Cosmic Generator, and then you go through the roller coaster getting the Cosmic Generator back from the big bad guy, so to speak. Now, when you're on it, this is from just Guardians of the Galaxy. There are 6 different song options that will play. So people say depending upon the song, sometimes the ride can be more fun if you have like a fun song. The 6 song options are Disco Inferno by The Tramps, I Ran So Far Away by A Flock of Seagulls, Conga by Miami Sound Machine, Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fears, One Way or Another by Blondie, and September by Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Okay.
So I've definitely gotten a few of these songs before. Some of them I don't know, and honestly, sometimes when I'm on the ride, I don't even hear the song. Yeah, sometimes I literally don't even hear the song. Like I have no idea what the song is because I just like black out. I'm just like, "Wee."
I can't comment about that because I've another ride I've never been on.
Yes. They did do a holiday overlay in 2022, the year that the ride opened, with Christmas songs when the ride premiered. But they have not done that again since.
Oh,
They
wow.
never did the
Okay.
holiday overlay again. I guess it's only been like, what,
Maybe
2
they
years?
asked people how they liked it, and people said they'd rather have the
I
other
wonder maybe
songs.
if they did too, just because it was like the first year that it opened. And then, yeah, for the most part, Disney World doesn't do any holiday overlays. Disney World isn't like, none of the parks do major holiday overlays for the rides itself. It's kind of a Disneyland thing. So perhaps, yeah, they test ran it. People didn't really care that much for it. And so then they just went back to, the good old regular 6 songs options that you get. Now, I will say this is not my favorite ride in Disney World at all. So, but I do think that it is one of the best rides that they've created because of how unique the roller coaster is. Essentially, when you were on the roller coaster, again, another ride where people get motion sick, is that you're sitting in like, your little cart or whatever, and the cart will move around kind of back and forth, up towards of being backwards, kind of going forwards, going sideways, and you're still on the roller coaster track. So you have 2 different movements happening at once. You have the movement of actually being on the roller coaster and the movement of your little cart that you're sitting in, like your seat kind of like turning back and forth and spinning in little circles. Very controlled, of course. Like it's always the same every time. It's not just like willy-nilly circles, but you are moving around, and that throws a lot of people's equilibrium off as well. But do think that concept of the roller coaster is pretty unique. I know a lot of people who've gone to many different roller coasters, and they all say like no one's really been on a roller coaster like that. It's very different in that sense. And I think it was worth the money that Disney invested into it. I mean, like, it was definitely a lot of money. My only thing is that I wish it had a different theme. I'm personally not a big Guardians of the Galaxy fan. It's like, I like Marvel movies and I like the Guardians of the Galaxy, but it's just not my favorite personally. So I think if it had a different theme overlaying it, I probably would like it even more. But I still go on it every time because, again, it is arguably one of the best roller coasters that you'll go on. And everyone says if you're a big roller coaster person, you should at least try it once just to see what you would think of it, because it's just so unique in that sense. Just like the ride mechanisms of it is so unique. Like, it's not the tallest, it's not the fastest.
No,
it's just
a different concept.
It is. It's unique in that sense, and I think it's really fun in that way. So it's always a must-do for us. Our number one, what did you finally put for your number one? What is the best ride in Disney World?
My number one is Kilimanjaro Safari.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And first off, because obviously I love it. But the second thing is that truck ride that goes through the African safari.
Yeah, it takes you on a real African safari.
Yes, it takes you through an African safari through the different lands of Africa with live animals that come right up to the truck. You bounce around, you do all this stuff. I think the fact that they have this savannah built, that they have the animals and how they take care of them, how they feed them, how they control them, how
they set up their habitats to make it look as authentic as you can.
As authentic as they possibly can. Go through this whole thing. You are at the mercy of the animals, which I think is amazing that they can still run that and be at the mercy of the animals. I think everything about it, to me, makes it one of those rides that everybody should see. It's anybody who likes animals, anybody who likes the zoo, anybody who likes anything that's like that. It is just an amazing experience. And to me, it is one of the most innovative things they've done with the animal kingdom.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, like, I feel like Animal Kingdom surrounds that ride in itself. Like, everything's that
around
is
it
because of Kilimanjaro Safari and the savannah itself. The savannah is bigger than the park, I'm pretty sure. It's a huge savannah. You don't even see the whole thing when you're on the ride because, of course, it connects to Animal Kingdom Lodge, which has its own savannah.
Right.
So it's like a lot of animals are on this property.
Yes.
But I agree. It's like, it's one of those things where it's like, if you're never going to go on an African safari, this is basically
an
African
one to do.
safari. It's like you're experiencing what it would be like with the animals.
There are
right
other parks that will have you go through and like see the animals, like some of the Six Flags and like some of the zoos will let you get a little bit up close to the animals, but never in this type of atmosphere.
For sure.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm saying that's why I think the habitats are so good for that, because it's a lot of really great, perfectly crafted habitats for the animals themselves, as well as having such a variety of animals there too. Because even on, it's like you see so many animals on Kilimanjaro Safari, and then of course the person driving the truck, who really is actually driving that truck, is giving you a lot of like little backstory and like, details about the animals, which I think is really great to learn about, as well as also how Disney takes care of the animals and how it's all about preservation and how important it is to preserve, even whether here in like the United States or also in Africa too, like all the preservation efforts.
Right, all the preservation that they're doing.
And their natural habitats.
Yeah, I think that the way they bring it all together, anybody who is, it's not, does nothing for motion sickness. The truck bounces around a little bit, but there's no problem with motion sickness. And any age, anything, you can bring little babies, little kids, little everything on this truck. You can do it. You're right up there. You see the animals. It's just like being out there in nature. It's great.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I love this ride. This ride, unfortunately, did not make my list all over. It really should have, because I do think it is a very classic Disney ride in the sense, again, that's the whole reason why Animal Kingdom was built, was because of that safari. So, but my number one, this is where I have Pirates of the Caribbean. I think this is the most classic Disney ride in my personal opinion. I think if you think of Disney, you wouldn't think of Pirates necessarily, but I think it's like one of the top 5 rides people would start thinking of is Pirates of the Caribbean. It opened in Disneyland on March 18th, 1967, and then opened in Magic Kingdom on December 15th, 1973, since it was not an original day opening ride. It was thought because Florida was too close to the Caribbean that people would find the ride, they wouldn't really be interested in the ride because the Caribbean's right there. But people were actually super upset that the ride was not in Magic Kingdom. So Disney, like again, 1971 to 1973, they immediately were like, what? Let's just add it. So they added it in. Immediately added the ride in when the feedback came through. So the ride takes you through a few different pirate-themed scenes of pirates villaging and stealing items in small villages. It's all in a very lighthearted sense, so it's not like really super dark or sad or anything like that. There is one scene where they're kind of like drowning a dude in a well, but he's like, okay, he'll be fine.
Seems to be fine.
So,
his wife is telling them.
You loosely follow Jack Sparrow as he's on the search for a large siege of treasure, and of course Jack Sparrow does find it. This was added on later on, of course, before like the movies even came out, but now it is added on as well. I think we're going to do a whole deep dive into Pirates of the Caribbean. So I didn't do a lot of details here because there's a lot of things that go on in Pirates of the Caribbean. When I was just doing my research for this, that I was like, all right, we need to do a full episode on this, because even from park to park, it's like the storyline drastically changes and how they crafted the story and everything. So it's very different.
Okay, we should do that.
So we'll do a whole episode on Pirates of the Caribbean. But I do think this is one of the best. I think this is the best ride in all
favorite
Disney World.
ride.
It is my favorite ride. It took me, I think, a year for me to decide what my favorite ride was in Disney World. And it was actually between Pirates of the Caribbean and Soarin' for a really long time. Funny enough, Soarin' didn't even make my list this time.
Well, obviously, see, we tried to like think about the best rides, and then but our own
That's insane, yeah.
colored version is Amanda picked her favorite, and I picked my favorite.
But I do
as
think
number
this
one.
is one of the best rides, though. It's hard because when I was going through this, there are a lot of rides in overall Disney. I feel like I was going a lot more for like the innovation of rides as well. Like all of my rides kind of had some kind of innovation to it, and this is the first classic ride. Because there are a lot of rides I think are considered like Haunted Mansion.
Well, yeah, when you
for
told me to,
instance.
like, Amanda does all the planning here, as we all know. She has all the extra stuff. But when she told me to do it, that's what I tried to do. I tried to think back and say to myself, okay, not just the ones I love and think are really great. I got to think about what they are and what the innovation is and what they give you for what you're going on the ride.
For sure. And again, some of these rides that, from Pirates, Cosmic Rewind, Tower of Terror, Flight of Passage, Rise of the Resistance, like they all have different innovations that are in them that make them Disney, but also make them like technology-wise something very different, something very new that's very fun to see.
Right, or bring you somewhere where you'll never be someplace
again,
else.
have that very immersive storytelling that you're like not really going to get on another ride, especially some of these dark rides that Disney have. A lot of other parks don't do the dark rides the way Disney does. They do more of like the roller coasters or like the fun rides or something like that. Yeah, so like these storytelling, like It's a Small World, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Haunted Mansion, a lot of those storytelling dark rides, are they're so fun, they're so interesting, and it's like you don't really get that kind of storytelling.
That's why
in other
people go
rides.
back over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but that was our best rides in Disney World. We actually did this episode because I thought maybe my brother would want to do it with us, but he ended up deciding that he didn't want to be part of the podcast, which is totally okay. He was just like, no, maybe not this time, and I was like, that's fine. But we did what I did was what
we did invite him.
That's why we did this, was actually because I was going to have him just name his top 5
So we had fun doing it anyway.
Yeah, because we have done an episode of just our top 5 favorite rides.
He's
in
had a lot
Disney
on
World,
his plate right now.
That's
so
why
he
this is
said-
the best rides in Disney World. It's not just our favorites. It's the best. Because again, Cosmic Rewind is not a favorite of mine. So I wouldn't even put that, I think, even in my top 10 of favorite rides in Disney World. It's not a favorite. I just think it's a great ride, though. Objectively, it's a great ride. So, all right, this is normally where we do a little bit of Disney news, but we are pre-recording right now during Christmas week. So because of that, there hasn't been a lot of news that comes out because it's Christmas week right now as we're recording. So no Disney news this week. But there is one Disney birthday on January 12th. It is Mater's birthday. So happy birthday to Mater. One of the things I always kind of wondered about the Cars universe is very interesting when you deep dive into the car. Maybe we'll do a whole episode on the Cars universe. Yeah. It is a very interesting universe if you think about it. Like if you think about it too, there's the Pope is in Cars 3, which means that they have a whole religious structure in the Cars universe. Yeah. One of the things
I've only seen the first movie.
Yeah, one of the things I always wondered too is like how does like life and death work in the Cars movie? Like do they just build the cars and that's how you have like a baby car? Okay. Or like cars, like for instance, like cars die because sometimes they get rusty in the engine stops, but you see the rusty cars in the first car movie, so it's like, well, they don't die, they just get a little rusty. It's like, but you can fix a rusty car, or can you not fix a rusty car? Do you just stay rusty forever? I don't know how that works. But then you also have the little planes as well, so like the planes are like a whole different like species, but they're still people because you still interact with them. But then it opens up a whole other thing where it's like cars can ride inside of other cars, which is kind of weird if you think about it.
Yes, but this is appealing to children. They don't think that far ahead.
But like Lightning McQueen rides inside of his truck car and then you can fly in the airplanes. And it's just like, well, this is very interesting now. But then some of the cars can fly because they have little jetpacks. So it's like, I don't know.
Well, cars can be transported, so...
It is. That's what I'm saying. It's a very interesting world. And I would love to deep dive further into the Cars universe.
Love to do that one time.
It is very interesting. And the more you think about it, the more you're like, wow, this is unusual. Yeah. One of the things I saw someone post saying was that it's a shame that in none of the 3 Cars movies does a car start crying and they have to use your windshield wipers to get rid of the tears. None of the cars have
they
cried
don't
yet.
do that?
Yeah, no one does that. But they're saying that would be really funny if they did that. So I think they should do that in one of the Cars. I wonder if there's going to be a Cars 4. I don't really know.
I don't know.
At this rate, they're doing so many movies that it's like, who knows if there's going to be Cars 4. But I mean, like Cars is such a popular movie, especially.
Yeah, it's a popular series.
Yeah, because it's the only one that really focuses around like automobiles and like trucks and cars are a huge thing for kids to play with. So I feel like they could do more stuff with cars. I don't know. Anyway, this is where we have our Disney memory. So do you have a Disney memory for today's podcast?
Oh God, my Disney memory. No, I think that my Disney memory is probably from my number one is the safaris when we first went on it, because that was another ride that you didn't know exactly what was going to happen and what were you going to see and where it was going to go. And I remember going on it the first time going, oh, I love this. And from that point forward, it was like, okay, we're going on this every time we come here.
Yeah, I do not remember the first time I went on the safari because I would have been a child when we went on it. And it's like for some of these rides, I do remember the first time I went on Tower of Terror because I was very scared to go on Tower of Terror because it was always seemed as
that was a different experience.
It was like a big kid ride and I was very nervous. And I remember everyone saying, it's like, well, if you can go on like these rides, like you'll probably be fine going on this ride. And so the biggest thing to me was that like was the most, not scary, but the most shocking thing to me is when you're on the ride in Hollywood Studios, none of the other Tower of Terrors have this. It's only the one in Hollywood Studios. Is that basically, maybe we'll do a whole episode on Tower of Terror too, because it's a very fascinating ride, how this ride came to be and the structure of how they created this ride and like all the innovation technology they had to create for this ride specifically. But in the one in Hollywood Studios, you're sitting basically in a cage for the most part. So you're sitting in this cage and you board the cage, so to speak. The elevator goes up, you see a little scene, and you see another little scene, and then you get to this room, and then the cage moves forward. So the cage, it's like
it jerks forward. Okay.
It's kind of like a trolley where it's it's controlled from the top down. So it's like a trolley where you move to this room. I had no idea that we were going to change elevator shafts, because that's what you're doing. You're changing from one elevator shaft to another elevator shaft. That's all that's happening right there. But I didn't know that. So when it started moving forward, I was floored. I was like, oh my God, where are we going? This is crazy. This is absolutely bonkers. I was like, I thought that was like the most amazing thing ever. I was like, this is crazy. None of the other rides do that. Not a single of the other Tower of Towers. Basically, they realized that the time for it to do that, like they changed the technology. The one in Hollywood Studios is first. They changed the technology to make it more efficient of a ride and get people on and off the ride faster. And so now you just stay in the same elevator shaft for the other one. So you don't move like that. So that's why in Hollywood Studios, it is special in that sense, because it's the only one that you change elevator shafts. And then the cage you're in is actually just connecting to the actual elevator itself. So you're just sitting in a cage and you're just going between elevator shafts, and it's the shaft itself that's moving you back and forth. So yeah, but I remember when we moved forward, that was the thing that was the most shocking to me, was just like, no one told me at all for years
that you're going to go forward, not just up and down.
That the ride moves forward, because when you're on it, you don't see anything on the floor. Like it's just all smooth, but it's not trackless. It's like a trolley. It's like powered from the top down. But again, I didn't know that. So that was just amazing. And then when I went on the ride in Disney Studios in Disneyland Paris, again, that one, you're in the same shaft. So when you board, you actually, so you line up to go on the ride, you kind of go through a little hallway. And when I first went on, I didn't recognize the fact I walked this tiny hallway into the ride itself. You go on the ride, again, it doesn't move. I knew it didn't move. When you come out, you actually just exit in the same place. So you board and exit in the same exact place.
Shaft.
So you see the same cast member who boards you. He just stands there waiting in the hallway
for you to come back.
And then he just has you get off in that hallway that you walk through really quickly, get on the ride. That's actually how you exit. So it's just like, and I don't remember, I feel, unfortunately, I don't remember exactly for Cosmic Breakout or Mission Breakout, whatever it's called, the one in Disney California Adventure Park, when I did go on it, because the whole theming was so drastically different. I just have no memories of getting on or off the ride. If I'm being honest, I just have memories of the ride itself. It was a long time. It was like 2017 we went to that park. So it was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago.
And we only went on it once, I remember, because we did get the fast pass for it, I remember, but it's like we only had the one fast pass for it, and it was late in the afternoon, and a bunch of stuff basically happened.
Right, it was 105 degrees.
It was very hot. LA was having a really massive heat wave that time.
Yes, they were having a heat wave.
So I have no memory of the one in Disney California Adventure Park, but Disneyland Paris, I remember I was just like, we're just right here. This same dude that put us on this ride is the same one greeting us off getting off the ride. Whereas in, again, Hollywood Studios is just different. But I do have distinct memories of that and being like, how come no one told me we were going to move forward? That was almost more
Nobody
scarier
even thought
than the
about
drops. So, but I think one day we'll do a whole deep dive as well into Tower of Terror, because that's a very fascinating ride. There are a lot of Easter eggs in that ride. Honestly, you could do a whole podcast on Tower of Terror.
I've never been on, so
there's a lot of stuff about Tower of Terror. It's very interesting, that ride. So maybe we'll do a few things on that. So some of the other ones we can't. Like, there's not much to Flight of Passage, if I'm being honest. No. So some of these, there wasn't even that much to Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. Some of them don't have as much immersive history.
But some of it does.
Especially because those are the newer rides. It's like Tower of Terror is a slightly older ride. But all right, let us know, which rides do you think are objectively the best in Disney World? We will have a dedicated Instagram post on our Instagram, Almost Amanda X, or if you're listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment down below. Would love to know which rides you think are the best. And make sure you give us a review on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you're listening. So but until then, we'll see you real soon. Bye.